Hey everyone, welcome back, or welcome to the Enduring Churches podcast. This is so weird because I'm used to being not beside you. It's so great.
Yeah. By the way, you've got to watch this one on YouTube. This one's uploaded. Go to our webpage or go to our YouTube channel and check this one out because
we're together.
We're together. We're in person. I mean, this is like we almost did this live, but we decided not to do this live because the audience, we didn't want to cause an internet crash.
That's true. There'd be so many people watching it, we wouldn't know what to do. But we are actually recording this in Nashville, Tennessee. We got to get together, and we're at the Southern Baptist Convention, and so it's been a great, fun time. We've got a couple more days we get to be together. But so we just want to talk to you today and get to experience this together with you.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. And by the way, if you don't know that we are Southern Baptist pastors, ministers, we believe in the power of cooperation, and really that's why we do the Enduring Churches podcast. You don't have to be Southern Baptist to listen to us. I hope that we say things that can help you anywhere, but there is something powerful about being united with brothers in Christ, and we are so glad we get to be united to do this together. So anyway, cool.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to have a good time. And just to kind of go with what Alan just said, we do have a lot of friends that are not Southern Baptists that are part of other he's got two friends that are part of other denominations or independent churches, and we want you to know that as long as you are sharing about Jesus to the world, and man, we want to come alongside you and be there for you.
So Trent, we're here together in Nashville, and it's a beautiful night. We're sitting out here on a deck, house we were able to share this week. And so, what is it we want to talk about today? Yeah,
so change, that seems to be our middle name, right?
Yeah, right, but big picture change, right?
Right.
We don't want to talk about we oftentimes talk about change within the church, like how are you going to change something or something like that, but we're actually going to take change from maybe a little bit different perspective today.
Yeah, and we want you to kind of understand kind of where we're coming from too. We've been sitting in the Southern Baptist Convention meeting all day and listening to resolutions and things and changes. And so this is kind of on our heart and mind, and we want to talk through some of the things about change and how to deal with it as an overall, as Alan said, big picture deal.
Yeah, and it's a great chance to detox too, because after a day in meetings, you definitely need some detox time. But one of the things a couple of weeks ago, Trent, we listened to several other podcasts, so we're not independently brilliant. We borrow from others.
You're kidding.
But I was listening to a Carey Nieuwhof interview with Gordon MacDonald, which, by the way, I would highly recommend that interview. Gordon's 82 years old. He's seen a lot, done a lot, and he said something about how he feels that the church is at a precipice. And at the convention, we hear a lot about this is a kind of a shaking moment in Baptist life. This is going to be a landmark time, and we are at a landmark time in history. Things have changed fast. Things have changed in our culture. As people of faith, we are behind our generation. He said, I'm not going to be alive to see this, but after a period of decline, he thinks that the church is going to see some amazing and bright days. And I just thought it was so good to hear a wise sage remind us that God is still in control and that God is up to something. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of put on my heart a thing of how do we prepare for change at that big level, at that crazy level.
Yeah, and there's so much. It seems like in the last year, Alan, that there's been so many changes, and our culture seems to be changing so fast that all seems to be very negative. But again, Gordon MacDonald kind of pointing to the positive side in his interview, and I agree. I think there's bright days ahead for the church, bright days ahead for those who would work together to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's right. And good news is I can wear a Paisley shirt right now and not feel ashamed to do it. So
he's secure, more secure than I am.
Yeah. So anyway, Trent, I think the first thing, and isn't this true? Because I know it's true in my life that people leading in change sometimes are the people who hate change most.
Yeah, and Dana always says, that's my wife. She always says that change is my middle name, and I like change. But you're right. There are sometimes when people see a need for change, and they will help to make that possible, even though they're the ones that would typically be like, no, I don't feel comfortable with change.
Yeah, I heard that leaders love change, right? And I remember hearing one leadership expert say leaders don't really love change. They love the change that they want to see,
yes,
but they don't really love change. So, I think it's important for us to remember that we talk oftentimes, oh, this needs to change or this needs to change, and then someone changes or something changes, and we go, oh, I don't like that, and so it's important for us to remember that.
Yeah, I think leaders, not only do they like the change that they like, but they like the change that they initiate.
Yes.
Because it's in those cases where we feel like we have more control over the change that's happening. And we may see a need for change, and so we get to push the ship. We get to say, hey, this is what needs to happen. And so as leaders, we like those kinds of changes. But there are other times when we may not necessarily be the ones who see the change or are the people who are pushing for the change to happen, but we also begin to realize that, hey, this is a good thing.
Well, and I think it's because change happens without asking our opinion, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
We came through this time, and we'll go back, and history's going to say one thing or another about the movement, in the 1980s and 1990s, and we had the moral majority, and all those things. And what we were trying to do is demand that society change in accordance with our opinions. And I think one of the things that we've had to wrestle with as the church over the last 20 years or so is that change happens, and it didn't really ask us. It hasn't asked the church what our opinion is, and in fact, at times it's demanded that the church change our opinion to meet the world, and the gospel tells us that's where that point of conflict of that conflict is. And so change happens, and it really didn't ask our opinion in this.
That's true, and it brings a tension, and that cultural tension between society or our culture and the church, and whether we're going to change in the same directions. Sometimes we try to pull and change in opposite directions. Our culture, the lost culture, I would say, those people without Jesus have not asked the church's opinion, and sometimes, unfortunately, we have not earned the right to share our opinion, with the culture around us. We've assumed too many things. We've not lived out the love of Christ in some situations, and so, unfortunately, we haven't gotten the right to share with those who are lost, those people without Jesus, the changes that could help them. We've missed that opportunity sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's why the church, we're at such a crossroads, and we're at the place where how are we going to endure in the future? What are we going to do to make a real difference in our future world? And Gordon MacDonald, Carey Nieuwhof, Will Mancini and Future Church, everyone talks about how we are at this critical moment in history. Gordon MacDonald compared it to the Reformation, that we're at that big of an event in history, and so we're going to see change like we've never seen it. And we got some information from George Barna Research this weekend that really, I think, begins to show some of those shifts and some of those changing dynamics. We're just finding out what Generation Z feels as the first section of those young adults are really kind of are starting to put their opinions out, are starting to take jobs and entering the workforce, and they have a hugely different mindset from any other generation we've ever seen.
Yeah, but there are some drastic differences. They're going to move to smaller and smaller, and so big events may not be the key to reaching this group. It's going to be more like sitting and having a conversation at a coffee shop is going to be more likely to reach them. Yeah,
I grew up and you grew up as well. I mean, we were events people. I mean, I remember going through college, and every time there was a big event, we were there.
Right.
And I remember going to youth conferences and college conferences with with countless numbers of people, and we enjoyed that. We embrace that. And the next generation is like, it's a little too showy, it's a little too flashy. I really want a place where I can ask a question, and where's a safe place to ask a question. And I think one of the big shifts that's coming is in the realm of questions. And you, Trent, I know you're passionate about questions, but we've got to be able to embrace people's questions, and that's probably the biggest difference in the way we communicate today.
Yeah, I think it's typical for us to get defensive when people ask questions, but I honestly, especially young people that are just becoming adults, as they're asking questions, it's not to try to trap us. It's not to try to make us angry. They have a legitimate question, and no matter what those legitimate questions are, we need to be able to hear them and to have an actual conversation without getting defensive about those.
Yeah.
I think that those young people, they're looking for something that is authentic. They're so surrounded by stuff that's technologically and on their phones, on their computers, Twitter, Facebook. Well, they're not really on Facebook. But all those things, and they're not sure what is true. And so they want to have a conversation with somebody, maybe even older people, and have a conversation and say, what really is true? And so we can talk to them about Scripture and show them what is true.
Yeah, I think one of the early evidences on Generation Z is they're multi-generational. They have respect for people in every generation. I think that's one of the cool things about them. They're very open to mentoring and those close relationships, and I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of excited about some of the things that they present, but we've got to be ready. We've got to be ready to jump on some of these changes as we hear about them. I'm going to throw a statistic out, and I don't remember what it was. Maybe you do, but it was just about the openness of people of having a gospel conversation, that people are much more open to that than we had really expected to see in the post-COVID world. And this is like brand new research. It's going to be coming out in a Barna report. So if you get Barna's stuff, know that you're going to get some of that information. But I was encouraged to hear that. But it's a conversation, and if it's not conversational, if it's preachy, and we're going to continue to preach in our churches, but you can't be preachy in your relationships.
Right. Well, and I wish that I could remember, and I'll have to go back to my notes because, we got to sit in a conference where one of the lead researchers from Barna was able to share with us all these things and break them down. And the cool thing was that it wasn't just the young people that were more open to these conversations. It was every age demographic was open, had a positive opinion about being willing to listen to a conversation about that.
They want a conversation. They don't want us saying "get off my lawn," or anything like that. They want to have a genuine conversation. Well, Trent, we're coming up on a year, and a few things happened over the last year that kind of shifted a few things. I think it was COVID. It's hard to remember now. It's been so long ago. But, we're going to be years trying to figure out, did we make the right moves with COVID? Should we have worn masks? Should we not have worn masks? Should we have locked down? Should we not have locked down? How many strains are there? How good are the vaccinations? There's a million questions, and we're not going to know the answers to all of those emphatically for years and years and years. And the same is true with change. We make change, and we've gotten so used to immediate results, and the change that is going on right now is going to take years to sort out how effective we were in the midst of it.
Oh yeah, and there's so many things that we've been forced to change, and we begin to question ourselves: did we make the right decision? Have we gone down the right path? Is this the same path we need to go on? And it seems like, especially if you're a pastor or staff member that's listening to this, you may feel like that, man, that's all I do is change things. There's nothing that I can nail down and say, this is what we do. And so I think in the middle of all this change and trying to figure out, hey, if I'm going down the right path, is I've got to keep that, what we've been hearing all weekend is keeping the main thing, and that is that, okay, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so I've got to nail down that and keep focusing on Him, and all these other changes that we're sometimes not in favor of, I think that they will sort themselves out. God's wisdom is going to give us wisdom and show us the direction we need to go.
Yeah, and I think the more transparent we are with the change too, the more that's going to be. I think that's another theme that's come up, is that transparency, and I think there's a better word than transparency. I think sincerity. I love the word sincerity, and I think we need to be sincere in what we're doing and who we are, how we live. All of those things make a huge difference as we navigate the cultural change and the cultural shifts that are going on. And so we've got some points here. Who knows, we may add one or two in by the time we're all said and done. But Trent, how do we adapt to change?
Well, and especially, Alan and I we're getting into the older part of the demographic.
Speak for yourself, old man.
I am older than Alan, and he likes to remind me of that. But yeah, we are getting to that point, and we're getting to the group that is typically, they assume we don't like change, and that's probably true. It's fair to say that. But so as we're in that, we need to be willing to take on some changes and continue to grow. I think change and grow are synonyms that we need to keep together, because if I'm not willing to grow, I won't be willing to change, and if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And so you've got to be willing to take on some change in your ministry and in your life in general, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just so huge. You have to make change and just let it grow in you. So it's important for us to change something, and maybe it's just being willing to change something in how you do your services, or being willing to learn and maybe consider a preaching style that is more interactive, or considers more questions, or maybe it's willing to take a group of teenagers from your church out to lunch at Taco Bell and ask them some questions, how you can reach out to their friends, and how you can understand what's going on in the world, and just ask questions, and don't give them the answers. Let them ask the questions that they have, and process those questions before you answer them.
Yeah, and don't get frustrated, because that teenagers are the king of I don't know, and so it's going to take a while. So don't get frustrated when you try to take on these, things like Alan is saying. And it takes a little while to grow that relationship enough where they're willing to actually talk to you and have a conversation. So it may take a few lunches, to get to that point.
So does that mean we shouldn't quote 80s music anymore?
Yeah, they don't even know what that means, man.
You might as well jump.
That's right.
So anyway. Oh, no, we're not going to jump. We're going to roll. We're going to roll with changes that don't involve that involve non-essential doctrines of our faith.
Yeah, I was told by a pastor friend a long time ago that that there are essentials and there are non-essentials, and there are some things that of our faith that are essential, and we're not going to give way on those things. But there are some other things that we can have a discussion about and say, hey, well, tell me why you feel this way, and it's possible that we do need to change some of those things.
That's right. I think probably the best moment of the convention was when the motion came to turn on the air conditioning at a higher level.
Yes,
that was a much needed change.
The AC
it was easy. It was easy to adapt. Sometimes you just got to roll with things and let those things go. But yes, our world is changing. Some of the hills that we died on, that we thought were huge hills a long time ago, are not the hills that are worth dying on. And I've been around in near denominational type stuff, and I've watched people be ripped apart for little things. I remember an artist being reprimanded for using a Michael Jackson song in a mime that communicated a truth, and it communicated what he was trying to communicate, and yet he was told, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. And it's kind of tragic that we make that an essential doctrine, but we know that Paul quoted many times people who were not of the faith. And so it's okay to learn from a multitude of places, and to kind of learn to roll with some things and say, you know what, okay, this is just how it is. I'll get an electric car.
I don't know that I can go there yet. Well, but that's true, and we've said this several times on our podcast episodes that being able to listen, I think, is a key in this, because that communicates to the person being listened to that, hey, I do value you enough to listen to you and possibly change, if I'm willing to listen to you, then yes, hey, we can have a discussion and we might get to change something. I'm willing to listen and hear your points. Right now in our culture, it seems like everybody, they want to spew their opinion, but they don't want to listen to anyone else. And that's a recipe for disaster. And
dialogue is important, and it's really at the heart of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we were to go and make disciples, it involves something that is verbal and shared, and it becomes a conversation. And Jesus was the master of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he taught us how to communicate with others. And so, Trent, you and I, we are certainly we are still part of the change culture to a degree, but we will likely not be the poster boys. One, you don't want us on a poster. There's obvious reasons for that. But secondly, we really are probably on the older side of change. And while we are people who are still making changes, I think the change is in leaders who are probably now in their 20s and 30s. The biggest changes we're going to see.
Yeah, and we just had a resolution today talking about the need that we are going to make every effort to reach out and to share the gospel with everyone 18 and under. And there are going to be some changed leaders that are just now in elementary school. We have no idea what's coming in the future. And if we are not doing our best to take advantage of every opportunity with those younger people, those in the 20s, for sure, those young leaders, man, you need to take them under your wing and have those conversations with them. Say, hey, what do you feel about this? Because there are a lot of people in their 20s that feel like nobody is willing to listen to them, and sometimes they have great ideas, Alan. They have tremendous ideas.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and so we need to listen to them. We also need to be putting energy and effort into those that are still in school, and because they are the future of our mission, being able to share the gospel around the world.
Yeah, we need to pray for these young leaders. I watch them. I see kids struggle to become leaders, and I'll take the athletic field as an example. When I was a kid, I said, hey, I'm going outside to play with friends. We created our own games. We made our own rules. We enforced our own rules. And if you didn't follow the rules, we shunned you. You had to play by the rules, whatever the rules were created. Okay, so the slide is now base. Mm-hmm. Or what? Well, okay, well, that's the rule. All right, the leader has spoken. That is base. And we've moved into a culture where kids, from the time they're 2 years old and up, they're always told what to do. They don't make a leadership decision. They don't they don't answer the leadership call. And we're at a crisis of young leaders. We do not have young leaders rising in the ranks, and we need gospel leaders. And I believe God's going to raise them up. And we want to be part of helping raise up that next generation and preparing that next generation. And so we need to be praying fervently for the leaders of this next generation who are going to be a huge, huge part of really the new church reformation as it comes along.
Yeah, I agree, Alan. And this is something that I've been trying to push in my church, is that we are praying for those young people to be called out, that God would call them out. And so, yeah, I agree. We need to be praying. If we want God to call out those from our church, and we want those great leaders, we do need to be praying. We need to be praying for them, praying that God would be the one who speaks to their hearts, that God would show them how awesome He is, and that serving Him and being a leader in ministry or even the business field or whatever, but being a person who's willing to stand up for what they believe, standing up for the gospel of Jesus Christ, is amazing. And that you can do that you can make those decisions, you can make those hard stands and be bold for Jesus. I think we need to pray for that for sure.
Absolutely. Pastors and church leaders, I want to go back to that first thing. we struggle at times as leaders with the change that we don't initiate. But I promise you that change is all around you. I want you to just take this week and look around at the changes in culture, the changes in your community, the changes in beliefs and the way people think. And I want you to think about how effective you are navigating through that, because how we navigate change is going to do a lot to determine our future. And so we want you to be engaged. We want you to endure. We want your church to endure, and we're here to help you. So Trent, tell them how they can reach out to us.
Well, and we would love to have a conversation, not just you, and we appreciate if you watch or listen to our podcast. We think that's tremendous, but we want to have more of a conversation. And so in order to do that, you can look us up. You can go to our website, enduringchurches.com. You can look us up on Facebook, at Enduring Churches on Facebook. You can also email us. You can email Alan, ALAN, at enduringchurches.consulting. So it's not .com, but .consulting. Or Trent, Trent, at enduringchurches.consulting. And so that we could have more of a conversation with you, and you may have some great ideas for our podcast. We'd love to get some more ideas for episodes. Or if you've got something going on in your church, your ministry, we want to be there to have that conversation with you and maybe give you some fresh eyes, fresh ideas.
Yeah. We certainly do. And this is coming from two guys who this week were confused as the two Muppets that sat in the balcony at the Muppet Show back in the day, for all you old pastors who remember.
Some real talent.
Yeah, remember the two curmudgeons up there. So to anyone who made that analogy and has noticed that similarity, thank you for discouraging us. We appreciate it. But anyway, we haven't had much sleep lately. So anyway, we thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Enduring Churches podcast, and big stuff coming in the future. So stay tuned and you'll hear more about all those things.